New curves after an unforeseen transformation. Being married to someone who lives and breathes their career definitely has its downsides. Trust me, I know from experience. Marie and I have been married for 5 wonderful years, and I honestly can't imagine my life without her. From the day we met, I knew she was someone extraordinary. Still, there was one thing that had always been true. Her passion for science came before everything else. Looking back, I often realize how fortunate we were to meet during college. If our paths had crossed after she had already established herself as a biochemist, I doubt she would have made room in her life for a serious relationship. Marie has always been incredibly driven. Once she commits to something, especially her work, it becomes her entire focus. Luckily, our relationship was already strong before her career truly took off. We even managed to get married shortly after graduating, just before she accepted a position at Biodyne. Getting to that point wasn't easy, though. Marie worried that wearing a wedding ring might make employers assume she'd soon take time away from work to start a family. After countless conversations, I finally convinced her that those assumptions would probably exist regardless of whether she was married. I even joked that being married might make companies think she had a settled personal life instead of spending evenings socializing. Surprisingly, that argument won her over, and before long, we were husband and wife. For the most part, we adapted well to the demands of her career. There were plenty of late nights when she stayed at the laboratory and weekends when research took priority over spending time together, but we always found a way to make it work. The one topic we could never seem to agree on was having children. Around our 3rd anniversary, I felt ready to become a father. Marie wanted kids too, just not yet. She believed she needed to accomplish several important career goals before starting a family. Every discussion ended the same way, with her asking for just a little more time. Then, about a year ago, life made the decision for us. Despite being careful with birth control, Marie discovered she was pregnant. Like everyone says, no contraceptive method is completely foolproof, and we ended up being one of those rare exceptions. I was overjoyed the moment we saw the positive test. It felt like the future I'd been hoping for had finally arrived. Marie experienced the news very differently. She was happy about the baby, but that excitement was overshadowed by concerns about what the pregnancy might mean for everything she had worked so hard to achieve professionally. Sadly, many of those concerns became reality. Frequent medical appointments and relentless morning sickness made it increasingly difficult for her to maintain her usual pace at work. Eventually, Biodyne reassigned her away from laboratory duties, deciding that exposure to certain chemicals and research materials could pose unnecessary risks to both her and the baby. Rather than allowing her back into the research laboratory, the company transferred Marie to its virtual research division, where experiments were carried out through advanced computer modeling instead of physical testing. It wasn't the type of work she enjoyed, but she accepted the assignment without complaint. She was determined to prove that becoming pregnant wouldn't affect her dedication or productivity. She continued working until the very last possible moment. In fact, the morning her labor began, she was still sitting at her desk. Even after the contractions started, she insisted on finishing what she was doing. It wasn't until several coworkers practically forced her to leave that she finally headed for the hospital. 5 hours later, and about 4 hours after I raced to meet her, our daughter, Melissa, entered the world. She weighed 7 pounds, 3 ounces, and from the instant I held her, I knew she was perfect. I assumed the experience would finally convince Marie to take some time to recover, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Barely 2 weeks after giving birth, she was already planning her return to work. After discussing our options, we agreed that I would leave my own job and become Melissa's full-time caregiver. Financially, it was the most sensible choice. Marie's salary was significantly higher than mine, and once daycare costs were considered, I would have been working mostly to pay someone else to watch our daughter. So I embraced life as a stay-at-home father and settled comfortably into my new routine. Before Marie officially resumed work, however, we had one major challenge left to solve: how Melissa would be fed. Our original plan seemed straightforward. Marie would express milk during her workday, store it, and I would bottle feed Melissa while she was at the office. Unfortunately, the arrangement didn't last long. Marie hated pumping at work. She found it uncomfortable, inconvenient, and embarrassing. Since she was still assigned to office duties rather than the lab, she felt self-conscious every time she had to excuse herself. With relatively few women employed at Biodyne, she believed the process attracted far more attention than she wanted, particularly from some of her male coworkers. Eventually, she told me she wanted to stop pumping altogether. Then maybe we should switch Melissa to formula, I suggested one evening. Marie immediately rejected the idea. I'd rather not, she replied. Breast milk provides benefits that formula simply can't fully replace. She went on to describe everything she'd read about it: better immune protection, a reduced likelihood of certain health problems later in life, and even research suggesting possible developmental advantages. After listening for several minutes, I finally asked, if you don't want to use formula and you also don't want to keep pumping, what's the alternative? She studied me for a moment before answering. You could feed her. I frowned, unsure I'd heard correctly. I mean with breast milk, she explained. Your breast milk. For a few seconds, I could only stare at her. Marie, I said carefully, I'm pretty sure you've forgotten one important detail. I'm a man. I don't exactly produce milk. She remained completely serious. I know you don't, she replied. But that doesn't necessarily mean you couldn't. Seeing my confusion, she continued. Men have the same basic breast tissue. There have been documented cases where fathers have produced milk under unusual circumstances. It's uncommon, but biologically it's possible if the body receives the right hormonal signals. I blinked in disbelief. So, you're saying I should just let Melissa nurse and hope something eventually changes? Marie shook her head. No, she answered. That approach would take far too long, assuming it worked at all. Even with constant stimulation, it could be months before your body produced enough milk to nourish her consistently. Marie paused briefly before continuing. Our animal research department at Biodyne has created a hormonal treatment, she explained. It's designed to stimulate milk production in dairy cattle. I've spent months running computer models, and based on the data, I'm confident it could have the same effect in humans. I stared at her in disbelief. So, you're telling me I'd actually grow breasts? She shrugged casually. In a sense, yes. But nothing extreme, she replied. Realistically, you'd probably only reach about an A cup. Considering you're 6'5" and around 240 pounds, they wouldn't stand out very much. The fact that she'd already calculated all of this somehow made the conversation feel even more surreal. And when it's over? I asked. They should gradually return to normal after you stop nursing, she answered. It's similar to what many women experience once breastfeeding ends. Another concern immediately came to mind. What about my hormones? I asked awkwardly. Will this affect my sex drive or anything like that? Marie shook her head. Only for a short period. The treatment works very quickly. Within about 48 hours after the injection, your body should begin producing milk. By then, most of the medication will already be leaving your system, so everything else should return to normal. After that, you'll simply need regular nursing sessions with Melissa and occasional pumping to keep your milk supply steady. She described it so calmly that the idea almost sounded practical. As unusual as the proposal was, I couldn't find a convincing reason to refuse it. If I was completely honest, there was even something touching about the thought of sharing that kind of bond with my daughter. Being able to provide for her in such a personal way was strangely comforting. How long would this last? I finally asked. Until she's around 2 years old, Marie replied without hesitation. I nearly choked. 2 years. She nodded. Pediatric experts often recommend breastfeeding through the second year because of the continued nutritional and immune benefits. After that, we can gradually transition her completely to solid foods. 2 years sounded overwhelming at first. Then I remembered everything Marie had invested in her career and everything she continued doing to support our family. Compared with those sacrifices, feeding our daughter didn't seem impossible. After a long silence, I took a deep breath. Okay, I said. We'll do it. Relief spread across Marie's face. Thank you, she said softly. I'll bring the supplies home on Friday. The treatment uses a tremendous amount of energy while it's working, so you'll probably feel extremely fatigued during the first couple of days. If we begin over the weekend, I can stay with Melissa while you recover. I frowned. Hold on, what do you mean by recover? It's nothing dangerous, she assured me. You'll simply feel worn out until your body adjusts and the medication starts wearing off. That was that. I had 3 days before beginning what I jokingly called my milkman chapter. Even though I laughed about it, I couldn't completely ignore the anxiety building inside me. The entire plan felt unbelievably strange. Still, every time I fed Melissa her bottle, my uncertainty faded a little. Feeling her tiny hand wrap around one of my fingers and hearing her peaceful little sounds while she drank made it easier to imagine how meaningful it might be to nourish her myself. Friday finally arrived. Marie walked through the front door carrying a large paper bag and headed straight for our bedroom. After settling Melissa safely in her crib, I followed behind. The bedside table had already been transformed into what looked like a miniature medical station. I immediately recognized the syringe and the small vial containing the hormone treatment. But there were several other items I hadn't expected. 2 prescription bottles, a tube of lotion, and an 4-fluid bag. I looked at Marie with a puzzled expression. I thought all of this was supposed to be one injection. It is, she replied. Everything else is simply there to make the process easier. She pointed toward the 4 bag first. The treatment dramatically increases your body's energy demands, which means you'll lose fluids faster than usual. This will help prevent dehydration. Next, she picked up one of the prescription bottles. These are pain relievers. As your breast tissue begins developing and your milk glands become active, you'll probably experience soreness, itching, and a burning sensation. These should make you much more comfortable and help you sleep. Finally, she held up the tube of cocoa butter. And this is for your skin, she explained with a smile. I'll massage it onto your chest throughout the weekend to keep everything moisturized and reduce the tight, stretched feeling as your body changes. I let out a low whistle. I wasn't expecting this to be such a complicated process, I admitted as I looked over everything spread across the room. Marie smiled confidently. Don't worry, she said. Everything is under control. After arranging the supplies, she turned toward me. Still comfortable with the plan? I hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm committed, I said. Just a little anxious. She stepped closer and gave me a reassuring smile. You don't need to be nervous. I've tested this compound through dozens of computer simulations. The chances of anything going wrong are incredibly small. She picked up the vial and syringe. Before I prepare the injection, I need your exact body weight. About 240, I answered. She shook her head. I'll need a precise number. With a motion toward the bathroom, she said, Come with me. We walked into the master bathroom where the digital scale sat waiting. As I stepped forward, Marie stopped me. No clothes, she said. Even a few pounds could affect the dosage. With a reluctant sigh, I undressed while she calibrated the scale. This was really happening. Once everything was ready, I stepped onto it. Marie studied the display. 253 pounds. She looked up with an amused expression. So someone's been enjoying stay-at-home life. I laughed awkwardly. I guess replacing construction work with diaper duty isn't exactly a great workout. She gently poked my stomach. Well, if everything goes according to plan, producing milk burns hundreds of calories every day. You may end up losing some of that extra weight. I grinned. I'll take whatever bonus comes with it. She nodded toward the bedroom. Go get comfortable and take one of the pain pills before bed. A few minutes later, I changed into my usual sleep shorts and swallowed one of the tablets with a glass of water. Meanwhile, Marie sat at her desk, carefully writing calculations while comparing her notes with the hormone vial. Eventually, she looked satisfied. She drew the medication into the syringe with slow, deliberate movements before turning toward me. Okay, Brian. Roll onto your side. I did as she asked. She lowered the waistband of my shorts just enough to reach my hip and carefully administered the injection. The needle stung for only a second. When she finished, she smiled, gave my side a playful squeeze, and adjusted my shorts again. Thank you, she said quietly. You have no idea how much this means to me. She leaned down and kissed me gently. I instinctively kissed her back, thinking we might have a quiet moment together before the treatment really began. At that exact moment, Melissa's cries echoed through the baby monitor. Marie sighed with a small laugh. Looks like our daughter has other plans. She connected the 4-line to my arm. This will help keep you hydrated while the medication is working. She kissed my forehead. Sleep well. Then she hurried down the hallway to tend to Melissa. Between the medicine and the exhaustion, I drifted off almost immediately. The following 2 days passed like scattered fragments of a dream. Every so often I woke long enough to realize Marie was helping me swallow another pill or guiding me carefully to the bathroom before I slipped back into sleep. Most of the time, I felt completely drained, as if my body was using every ounce of energy on something happening beneath the surface. Eventually, I woke without anyone disturbing me. For the first time in days, my thoughts felt mostly clear. As I stretched beneath the blankets, I noticed an unfamiliar soreness across my chest. The area felt tender and strangely sensitive. I assumed the treatment had simply begun working. Still half asleep, I rested a hand against my chest to soothe the ache. The instant my fingers closed around soft, rounded tissue, every trace of sleep disappeared. I froze. Slowly I looked down. My right hand was resting on a noticeably full breast, while another equally prominent one rose from the left side of my chest beneath the blanket. I shot upright. What? My voice echoed through the room. Seconds later, footsteps raced up the stairs. The bedroom door flew open. Marie hurried inside, her face filled with alarm. Brian, please let me explain. I could barely hear her. My eyes remained locked on my own reflection in disbelief. She swallowed hard. I made a mistake during the dosage calculation. I finally looked at her. My formula should have used your weight in kilograms. She took a slow breath. Instead, I accidentally entered your weight as pounds. Realization spread across her face before mine. That means the amount I gave you was intended for someone weighing well over 500 pounds. The overdose overstimulated the hormone response and caused much more breast development than I predicted. I sat motionless, struggling to process her words. I actually have breasts, I whispered. Marie lowered her eyes. Yes. Her voice was barely audible. I'm so sorry. This was never supposed to happen. I couldn't tear my gaze away from my own chest. Only a few days earlier, I had been an ordinary stay-at-home father preparing to help feed my daughter. Now, everything had changed in a way I never could have imagined. The room fell completely silent as neither of us knew what to say next. After several long seconds of silence, Marie finally spoke. There is one positive thing, she said gently, searching for the right words. The treatment itself worked exactly as intended. Your body began producing milk about 6 hours ago, which means you're able to feed Melissa now. I slowly pushed myself upright, immediately noticing the unfamiliar weight across my chest. Everything still felt tight and tender, making the unexpected changes even more noticeable. Countless thoughts raced through my mind. Eventually, I asked the question that mattered most. Will this ever go back to normal? Marie didn't respond immediately. When I looked at her, I saw tears welling in her eyes. She quickly brushed them away, clearly overwhelmed with guilt. Marie? I prompted softly. She took a shaky breath. They'll probably reduce in size somewhat, she admitted. But the growth was much greater than I ever anticipated. She lowered her gaze. I don't think they'll return to the way they were before. If you wanted them completely removed, surgery would likely be the only permanent solution. The word surgery echoed in my head. The thought of undergoing an operation to undo what had happened was unsettling. Yet living indefinitely with a body that no longer felt like my own wasn't an easy idea to accept either. So, what happens now? I asked quietly. Marie looked heartbroken. I'll start researching specialists immediately, she replied. Someone experienced with this kind of procedure. I'll find the best surgeon possible. I don't want you living with something that makes you unhappy. I glanced down again. Uncomfortable. Barely scratched the surface of how I felt. After another pause, Marie spoke again, this time much more cautiously. Until we figure everything out, maybe we can still follow our original plan. I frowned. What original plan? She hesitated before motioning toward my chest. You could still feed Melissa. I stared at her. You're serious? After everything that had happened, I couldn't believe she was asking me to continue. She nodded carefully. The treatment has already taken effect, she said. You'll be producing milk for a while regardless. It could still benefit Melissa. Almost as if she had been listening, Melissa's cries drifted through the baby monitor. Marie glanced toward the nursery. I'll bring her in, she said quietly. Just try it once. For her. After a long hesitation, I reluctantly agreed. When Marie left the room, I sat alone, looking down at my changed body. It still didn't feel real. The reflection staring back at me seemed like someone else's. More than anything, I wished I could wake up and discover the last few days had all been a dream. But wishing wouldn't change reality. A minute later, Marie returned, gently carrying Melissa in her arms. She carefully placed our daughter into my lap and patiently adjusted my posture, showing me the most comfortable way to support her. Just stay relaxed, she whispered. She'll figure it out. It took a few moments. Melissa shifted around, searching for a comfortable position before finally settling. The experience felt unfamiliar, and I instinctively tensed at first. Then, everything changed. My body responded naturally, and the feeding began. To my surprise, the anxiety I'd been carrying slowly eased. I looked down at Melissa resting peacefully in my arms, calm and content. For the first time since waking up, the panic faded into the background. Nothing about the situation felt ordinary, and I still had no idea what the future would hold. But in that quiet moment, simply caring for my daughter brought an unexpected sense of comfort that I hadn't thought possible.